Done. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to be able to share my screen, so I'll do that right now. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, Laura, so if it's okay with you, I just would like to get started now. Perfect. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining How to Develop Authentic Friendships After Relocation. I will get into more about like who I am as I go through the presentation. Laura already did a job of getting like what your name is and what your country you're joining from, and it's super exciting to be able to see like so many people from so many places on this chat right now. So I really want this to not just be like me talking to you. I really want it to be an interactive conversation, and I really want it to be introspective for you as well. So at this point in time, like if you want to be able to like grab a journal or grab a piece of paper, or open up your notes app so you can take notes and like be reflective as we go through the presentation. I really invite you to do that. And also, like, please don't feel afraid to ask questions, to put something in the chat, to make a comment, because if you ask questions, I'll be able to answer you and be able to make this experience more worthwhile for you. Yeah? Thumbs up, everybody? Perfect. So before we get started, I wanted to invite you to take 1 to 2 minutes to just think about like what your ideal community looks like. And when I say look like, I don't mean like people's physical appearance, but I want you to take the time to think about like how you want to feel supported, how you want your friends to show up for you, and how you want your friends to show you that they care. And once you've thought about that, I invite you to write that down or just make a note of it in your head. And you can use the prompt, my community looks like XXX. So in my life, like I want my community, I want to feel supported. Like when I share big ideas from them, I don't want them to shut me down. I want them to support me or to give me good advice. I want people who are open to trying new things. So if I say, let's go try out this new museum or try this new dance class, I want people in my circle who are willing and able to do that and are excited about doing that. So, as I said before, we're going to be here for about 40 or so minutes, and we're going to go on a journey to learn about how to stop struggling to feel accepted and understood in a new place, how to go from feeling homesick AF to feeling connected and supported in a thriving community, and what's stopping you from finding your people and developing meaningful relationships with them. So if you're ready for this, please drop a yes in the chat so I can know that you're wrapped up and excited. Woo! Yes, I love it. So you're probably all wondering who I am, and so this is where I tell you. So I want to share about myself so that we're all on the same page as to why you can trust the information I'm about to share with you. And then moved to the US when I was 19. And I have been an expat. I lived in Spain, specifically Madrid, for half a year, and I've moved around a lot. Like I've spent shorter and longer stints in like a wide variety of places. So I really understand what it's like to show up in a place ready to live my best life and really struggle to find people that I connect with, people that I could see myself spending time with, and people who understood me and who I really understood. So I'm curious, how many places have you guys lived? Like drop a number in the chat box and let me know. So if you lived in Spain and then moved to London, like that would be 2. If you moved around a lot as a child, that could be a couple extras. I'm really excited to see what that would be like for you. Oh wow, you guys have lived in a ton of places. 5, 4. 3, 2, 7. Wow, Laura, I think you take the cake there. Awesome, 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 awesome. So you guys know what I'm talking about, I imagine. Like, you move to a new city and that's already tough. But when you couple that with like anxiety and feeling like the oddball out, which is definitely how I felt, and not being sure how to show up for yourself, like those frustrations can become super overwhelming. And what I realized is that I craved deep and meaningful friendships with supportive people, and I set up a way to do just that for myself. And the journey taught me more about clarity and mindset and commitment than I ever thought it was possible. And it really showed me how I can change my mindset and get clear and really set up myself for connection wherever I ended up in the world. So I just wanted to say that building friendships and community, especially in new places, takes time. And what I'm about to share will give you the tools that you need, but you still need to lovingly embrace clarity and commitment and consistency to feel the full benefits of blossoming friendships. So before we move on, I'd love for you to write your first name. So if your first name is Anya, or if your first name is Laura, like put Anya's Building Connection and Community Plan on your paper or your journal or your notes app, because that's what we're going to flesh out in today's call. And then I'm a big believer in intention and goal setting, not just because it's worked for me, but also because I feel that, well, not I feel like there are studies that show that when you write your goal down, you set an intention about it, you're more likely to succeed at that goal. So I really want to take some time to let you guys answer these questions, whether it's on paper or whether it is in your notes app, and really think about why is creating a thriving and supportive community important to you, and what you're hoping to get out of this time that we are about to spend together, being as specific as possible. And if there are any brave souls out there, if you want to share, like, please feel free to do that. Anybody feels like sharing or not really today? Thumbs up or thumbs down. It's okay if you guys don't feel like sharing. I just want to know if I should move on, if I should wait for some people.
I think Sumana said like yes to share.
Okay.
I cannot see so many people, but the ones that I can see.
So in the meantime, I can share why. I like growing up, I always thought that I was introverted and a loner. And I think that in a lot of ways I am introverted. But as I grew older, especially like in my mid-20s, I really realized that it's important to have people to call. Thanks, Danielle. It's important to have people to call. It's important to have people to show up for you. I became a citizen of the US about a year and a half ago, and just being able to have people there to like support me and to cheer me on because my parents and my immediate family couldn't be there was so important. And it really reinstated the fact that, you know, finding your people and nurturing relationships and creating community is like super important. So yeah, so some of the answers y'all gave are: connecting with others will help me be inspired to grow as a person. I love that. It's important to me because I love face-to-face interaction and sharing adventures. I love that too. Danielle says, reduce loneliness. That's amazing. Flora says, it helps, you know, to make home feel like everywhere. I love that, Flora. It's like wherever you go, you know, home is not just a place, it's the people that make you feel comfortable. Creating a supportive and thriving community is important to me because it's always nice to have a support system. Yeah, all these answers are amazing. Thank you guys for sharing. Okay, so we are in it now. So in this time, I really want to share 3 ways that you can start creating community and building authentic friendships in your life. Keeping in mind, you know, like I said earlier, like these tools are not a one and done approach. It really takes getting a better understanding of who you are and what you want, and devoting time to finding the people that are right for you. So the first action item is finding your people through hobbies and interests. So it really doesn't matter what your hobby is, whether your hobby is predisposed to meeting new people. So let's say playing on a sports team on Saturdays, or if you need support figuring out how to make a community building element to the hobby that you regularly do on your own. So whether that's drawing or playing video games. So using a piece of paper, like I invite you to write down hobbies or 3 activities that you love doing or have always wanted to try. So that could be salsa dancing, chess, football. And then what you're gonna do, like after the call, obviously, is like hop into Google and enter your hobby, like the specific hobby that you have, and then the specific city or like the surrounding cities that you're in, and see what comes up when you hit the search button. So an example of this will be like my friend Sasha, she loves to salsa dance. And when she moved to Oakland, one of the first things she did was find a Cuban salsa school in her neighborhood. And so her search looked something like Cuban salsa dancing plus Oakland plus California. And that's how she was able to like find a salsa class, find like-minded people, find people that she at least had one piece of common interest with, and then be able to build relationships from there. I know a lot of us are sheltering in place right now, but I would still use this tactic. And if you're asking like, how are you gonna use that? How does it make sense if we're all at home? I'm gonna answer that for you. So many of these communities that you find or programs or sports groups all have Facebook groups and online meetups and chat rooms. So you can start building community with the people in your neighborhood sooner than you think, even before all of the shelter in place advisories are lifted. I also think that this is an excellent tip for people who are thinking about moving or set to move later on in the year or next year. You can start building your community before you even set foot in your new home. And for me, like this is something I wish I had done when I moved to San Francisco, instead of just showing up and then starting to build relationships and then starting to build friendships. There are ways you can start to introduce yourself to people before you even get to a place. So are you ladies still with me? Drop in the chat box some of your hobbies, like things you've always wanted to do, things you wanted to try. I'm interested to see what you guys drop in there. Ooh, somebody says hiking. Somebody says poetry and dancing. Is it a particular type of dance or? Laura, I really like salsa too. Cycling, photography, paint and sip, those nights are fun. I also am really a big fan of wine, so that's amazing. Okay, great. So a lot of times when I'm listening to webinars, like people give me advice that I'm like, what's an example? Like, how can I actually portray that in my real life? So here's an example of how you can leverage the chats or the online hangouts that you are probably in a lot of right now. So, and you could probably even do this today, right? So let's say like you used to go to these monthly in real life coaching sessions about, you know, increasing the intimacy in your everyday life. Because of the situation you're in now, like the coach who used to do these monthly meetups, she moved those bi-monthly chats online. So most likely to engage her audience, she'll be asking questions and people will be commenting in the chat. So I really think like not only should you be responding to these questions asked by your hosts, but you should also be commenting on the responses of other people. So ask those people questions, respond to the things that they asked about, ask them for more information. It's possible, yeah, that people will not engage when you ask those questions the first time, but it doesn't matter. Like, even if you were offline, like connection doesn't happen overnight, but in the same way that you would show up for an offline event every single week and start to see and recognize some of the same faces, people will start to see you as a familiar face and either will eventually reach out to you or you will feel more comfortable saying like, hey, what's up? I recognize that you always come to these, like maybe we have a few things in common. So I firmly believe that if you show up as a curious, interested person, other curious, interested people will start to recognize that. So during the chat, drop a sentence that says, you know, like you're open to connecting, and leave a social media handle that you feel comfortable sharing, whether it's to the whole group or to the person that you ended up talking to within the chat. So, you know, I talk a lot about clarity, commitment, and consistency. So the way that shows up, you know, in this particular insight is clarity, really figuring out what your hobbies are, what are things that you're interested in, and you're doing that so that you can be committed. So if you find something that really excites you, it's going to be easy to show up to the community every time there's an option to do that. And then consistency, being present, asking questions, commenting, and essentially showing that you care. So are there any questions or anything you guys want to ask before I move forward? Oh, somebody here says drawing group. So Katerina and says a drawing group would be amazing. Daniel says a drawing group would be amazing. So like I would encourage you guys, even in this group, if there are more people who like drawing, you guys can, for instance, if you guys are into still life, like some person can be the host and can set up a still life, and then you all can spend like 30 or 45 minutes and draw the still life together, and then compare notes, and people who are more skilled at drawing can like give tips to people who are not as skilled. That's like an amazing way to start doing that right now, even though shelter in place isn't lifted in its entirety as yet. And in real life, maybe if you guys end up being in the same place, you guys can start doing those events like in person.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So basically, I started this community at the beginning because I couldn't find what I was looking for when I moved abroad, like all these, in all these times when I was like moving to Germany, for example, I couldn't find that many events that were connecting women like with the same interest. And because I couldn't find it, when I moved back and I settled in Madrid, I started to doing it myself. Like you can also, as Anja said, you can also create something together with another person or even by yourself, with something that you are looking for to create that community. And this is the main reason why I created, was because of that, because I saw it was like this part of missing this kind of like events that were more finding that kind of like deeper connection between expats. And also I managed to make my friends here with these events. Even if I was the organizer, all my friends here are from these events that I organized in person here.
Yeah.
I moved here.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Laura. Yeah, I think after a certain point too, I talk about that a little bit later in the presentation too, but I think that your example is amazing. It's like it's not easy for you to do the community on your own, or maybe you're not finding groups that you feel completely aligned with. Make your own group. Like, you have the ability to do that. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so the second one is one that we're probably all familiar with. It's friendship apps and platforms. And so, of course, I know a lot of people are on this, and apps come and go. Of course, there are benefits to not only the ones that exist while they're still available, but I want to spend a little bit more time sharing some tricks that I've used to just make my conversation a little bit more interesting on friendship apps. So I want to start off by saying, like, the standard way to benefit from this plan is to plug in your current interests or expertise when asked. So don't have but your profile, like, be thoughtful and fill it out, obviously. But one method that I've used on friendship apps and platforms that at the very least lead to some interesting conversations is something that I like to call challenge me on this. So instead of just doing like a regular schmegular profile, like, what you can do is think about, like, do you have an opinion that you'd like to be challenged on, or do you have a potential interest that you haven't had time to dig into as yet? So put it under your profile in the apps that you're using. So the hope is that, like, yes, while you'll meet people with some comparable interests, you'll also meet people that add a different kind of richness to your life. And so I'm not saying, like, drop controversial topics in here. Like, this is, like, very, very fun. So, like, things like, do you think cats are better than dogs? Like, explain why. Or, I want to go to Paris for a month vacation next year. Is there any reason why I shouldn't? So, like I said, like, I would never suggest engaging with someone whose views make you feel unsafe or damage your self-worth or are anti to your core values. So just make sure that you're being aware of this as you engage with people like online. And another important thing that you need to have in your profile is the invitation. So I'm sure there are many dating coaches who talk about this tip, but like friendships or relationships too, right? So an invitation to connect could be something like, ask me about the best place to get martinis in Madrid, or message me if you have opinions on the best dance class in Cancun, like wherever you are, and you can interchange those cities depending on where you need to be. And so in addition to filling out your profile, like you really want to make sure that you have the invitation, like invite people to like want to reach out to you. And then also, if you feel like it, incorporate the challenge me on this section in your profile to get people to like respond to you and for a conversation to start going that way. Oh, somebody dropped a little red thing there. Interesting. Okay, so so how does clarity, commitment, and consistency come up in this insight? So clarity is figuring out which apps you want to use. 10 is too many, 1 to 3 is more manageable. Commitment, commit to spending 5 minutes a day in each app, adding connections, responding to connections. And then consistency would be make it a point to reach out to X number of connections each day. So pick a number that you can maintain. It's better to do 2 every day and have that consistently over a period of time than to say, I'm going to talk to 15 people every day, and then after a week, you're completely burned out and you don't want to do it anymore. All right. So before we move on, I really want to just see where you guys are. Do you have any questions, any comments, any concerns? Feel free to drop a chat. And if nobody has questions, I'll just move on. All right. So this is my favorite insight that I'm about to move on to. I think it really ties into what Laura was saying, like going out into the world and creating your own community that way. So one of the best ways, I think, to be intentional about the fact that you're interested in rebuilding your community to the universe and to the people around you is to start being a catalyst for connection, right? Oh, somebody said something. Oh, just Bumble BFF is a good one. There is a new app that's about to be launched. It's really amazing. It's called Amica app, and it's specifically for solo female travelers. So as soon as COVID is not as intense anymore, that will be released. That's also a really good one. And then, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, Katerina says, I've made good friends via dating sites too. Yeah, that's also an option. Like if you meet up somebody for a date and you have good vibes but you're not interested in them, like you could always offer being a friend. Like that's worked for some people too, so make it happen for yourself. That's awesome. Okay, so like Laura was saying, you know, instead of just showing up to the communities that are already created, like why not put in the work of being a hostess for your own community? So of course, this isn't going to happen on week 1 of you deciding to do this for yourself. But if you're consistent about showing up, introducing yourself, being brave about meeting up with potential friends, eventually I think you can start to like put out invitations for your own events and meetups. Oh, thanks, Laura. Or Laura says, using the ambassador program is almost like a friendship platform, and then also FB groups. Exactly. So, of course, during this time, you know, we really have to be careful about following shelter-in-place advisories. But I have a few tips for the platforms that you use to make face-to-face virtual time more exciting and more interesting and more intimate. So, I have a big secret for you guys. Are you guys ready? Thumbs up. One of the main reasons that Zoom calls feel exhausting is because it's not because anything's wrong with you or your group isn't cool enough. Is that oftentimes we just don't have enough structure in our Zoom calls. Like I think sometimes we look at, let's say, a reality TV show, like, oh, that's so effortless, or just making it happen. Even in that reality TV show, there's so much planning and thought that goes on behind it to make it seem effortless on TV. So always thinking about, like, sometimes the more put together and effortless and magical things seem, it's actually a lot of work goes on behind it to make sure it comes across well. So you want to be thinking about that as you plan your Zoom meetings or your Zoom calls going forward. So like I said, you can't just show up on a Zoom call and expect a magical connection to just happen. You have to think about the people that you're into this virtual circle. So it really doesn't mean that they have to be the same. But by the very nature of their being, the fact that they're all in one room, like it needs to bring some sort of like interest to these Zoom calls. So think about asking yourselves questions like, did Rishma or Juan Carlos both live in Boston at different times? Or did Marissa or Sioma, are they both cooks? But did Sioma go to cooking school and did Marissa learn from her mom? So that's what I mean when I say by the very nature of their personalities, when you put them into a room, it has to have some oomph or some interest. There needs to be some commonalities, but different enough to get guests excited about talking to each other. Another way you can add structure to Zoom calls is to have guests prepare. It helps to know what you're talking about, of course. Having a topic of conversation helps, but take it one step further by making sure that guests do homework or inviting them to do homework. So the next Zoom call, make it interesting for guests to talk about themselves and for guests to learn from each other. So some ways that you can do this is have guests create a soundtrack of their life. So have them write down 3 to 5 songs that really shape their life thus far and help them explain why. A second thing that you can do is appoint people to share about their knowledge. I think this is a really great.
Oh.
Okay, I feel like it went. And we're good now. We're good to go. Okay, great. All right, so yeah, as I was saying, like appoint people to share knowledge. I think this was really exciting when you learn something new about your friend. So maybe you didn't know your friend had interest in wine. Maybe you didn't know your friend knew how to draw, just going back to like what you guys were talking about before. But in this time, you know, they can spend like 15-20 minutes sharing something that they can teach you. And that can be a really great way to like start conversation and get people excited. And then this one is one of my favorites. Do you know like when there's a really fun TV show happening that everyone's really into? In the US, you know, it's usually like The Bachelor, The Bachelorette. Most recently, there was a TV show called Love is Blind. Lots of people have like parties and they bring people together and they talk about or watch a show together and then afterwards. You can do this online too. So you plan to talk about a TV show where everyone's watching, and then like what guests can do is like write certain questions that they want other people to answer. Then the host can just pick questions out of a hat, and so people feel comfortable talking because they're not actually put on the spot, and they can ask questions about something that everybody in the group knows. Yes, Jacinda, Love is Blind was really exciting for everyone. Like it was such a big hit here in the States. Okay, so drop a yes in the comment section if this is making sense to you guys. So I firmly believe that all of us are creative, especially people who, you know, travel to new countries and not just one country. Like some of you guys have like 7 and 8 and 5 and 4. We have the ability to like show up and like make things happen for ourselves. And so we just need to like take that same energy and that same sense of innovation and put it into this aspect of making new friends and meeting new people. So you can come up with a whole bunch of other different ways that you can add structure to your Zoom calls so that people get excited about the call. Like think about if I were to just send a Zoom invitation, I didn't have an agenda, I didn't know what it was about. I kind of like, I'm apprehensive about joining the call. But if I know exactly what's going to happen, I know exactly who's going to be there, I have an understanding of what we're going to talk about or what we're going to learn, like I put that on my calendar and I'm super excited about showing up and making it happen. Okay, so those are my 3 tips. I do want to just quickly touch base on what clarity, commitment, and consistency looks like for this action item.
So hot.
So I didn't come up with clarity comes from engagement. But it is a really important insight. So take the time to really engage in the previous steps, get a deeper understanding of the types of people that bring you joy and the types of people that you want to surround yourself with. In terms of commitment, understanding that friendship is not 2 weeks of work and I've got this all figured out type of situation. If you want deeper, more meaningful, authentic friendships, you must decide to commit to the process of showing up and being present and putting yourself out there. And then the third one is consistency. It's related to commitment. So if you decide to host, be consistent. You don't have to plan something every week, but maybe you can host something once a month or once a quarter. Become known as the person who always throws the fun reality theme show parties, or who always knows where to go for the best bartenders. And you know, once people see you as that person, not only do they show up to your events, but they bring other people as well. And I feel like Laura can really attest to this. Like, she started out and now she is known as somebody who brings expat women together to create connection and to create community. So that's really exciting. Okay, some journal prompts that I have. I just want to acknowledge that this is not an easy journey. A big part of your community building is really, truly, absolutely believing that you deserve what you want. And I think sometimes for us bold, adventurous, like take no prisoners, we really believe that we can use our willpower for so many things to happen. And so when we come up with a situation where our willpower isn't exactly working, it can be hard. We can show up to a new place, I've got this, like I can make this happen for myself. But after a few weeks or a few months, it's possible that you could be thinking like, why did I even move here? Did I make a mistake? I'm gonna give it 6 more months and then for things to get better. And then if they don't, I'm gone. I'm going back to where I came from. It can be easy for these thoughts to make us believe we don't deserve thriving, supportive, and peaceful community in our homes. So that's why I included some of the journal prompts I'm going to say to help get your mind right and to help you feel better about building community in a new place. So if you want, like, open up your notes app, get out your piece of paper and write down the ones of these that feel aligned with you and feel authentic for you. So what values does a real friend possess, according to me? In that case, it would be you. How can I emulate these same values in my real life? Where do I think that the people who possess these values hang out or spend their time? Why am I worthy of supportive community and authentic friendships? And then what can I do or practice to find more clarity concerning the people I want to be surrounded by? So again, what values do real friends possess? How can I emulate these values in my own life? Where do I think people who possess these values hang out or spend their time? Why am I worthy or supportive of community and friendships? And what can I do to practice and find more clarity concerning the people I want to be surrounded by? All right, so that was really the bulk of my presentation. Thank you so much for being here and being engaged. I really, really enjoyed spending time with you guys. Yes, I will copy and paste the questions. No worries. Thanks for letting me know. So I really wanted to give you guys a special offer just for being here. It's an ebook that I created called 31 Ways to Use Apps to Spark Deep Friendships. It's completely free. And I'm giving it to you because you guys are amazing guests. You were in tune. You guys asked questions. You guys responded in the chat, which is super exciting. So in this book, you get insight into a couple of things. It's like what you need to get clear on before you open friendship apps, a simple 3-step approach to ensuring friendship apps agree to meet or agree to video chat in this time that we're in, how to write intros to get people to respond quickly, and last but not least, the easiest way to be the most interesting person in the room. And just like a top secret, it's not about playing it cool. So it takes what we talked about here today and goes a little bit more in depth. The URL is on the slide, but just in case to repeat it to you, it's www.navigatingculture.co/spark friendships on apps. And like once you go there and put in your information, it gets sent straight to your inbox. I want to just touch really quickly on cultural differences. So I am coming from a very Western, dare I say, American perspective, and I want to be cognizant of that. But I just want to say that all humans are wired for connection. We're not built to just be alone forever and ever, amen? So like, don't deprive yourself of that, and like, don't deprive people of how awesome you are. Take time to do research, ask questions, read books about cultural norms. And then remember that even people who have been in a place for years, even people who have been born and raised somewhere still make faux pas. Like I've been in the US for 9 years now, and I still sometimes say things that are absurd because where I grew up, it means something completely different, and somebody has to tell me like, oh, like when you say things this way, it actually means this. And I'm like, oh, good to know. So yeah, like do your research, ask questions, figure out what's like culturally acceptable, but don't let that stop you from going out and like being your best self and finding your people. So I really wanted to spend this time. Do any of you guys have any questions or comments? I'm an open book. You can ask me more about me, more about my journey. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Laura, that's a great question. So Laura asked, how do we manage to find connections while being an expat, especially when you connect with other expats who after a few months or year, they leave the country? Do we need to adapt? So I will say it's up to you. I don't think you need to adapt in a way that is harmful. Like, I think it's good to adapt in like basic situations. So for example, when I moved from Boston to San Francisco, the way people dress at work is completely different. Like people don't wear high heels, they go to work in like fancier sneakers. It's very normal to wear hoodies, and I didn't have to, but I made the decision to blend in terms of like my appearance. Like my style stayed the same, but the way I chose to express that was different. However, when it came to like the type of people I wanted in my life, that stayed the same. So San Francisco is kind of known for people who are like superficial in a way, like they're very, very nice to you, but there's no depth. And I was pretty adamant, like I want to only meet and be close friends with people who care about some of the things I care about, who invest in friendships, and who are not friends with people for the basis of using them for who they know or what they know. And then if I were an expat in a country and I know I was going to stay there for 2 years, and I know that expats were moving in and out, like I would actually make a conscious effort to make a portion of my friends expats, but then make a portion of my friends people who actually live in the country, or people who actually live in the city, so that even though people move, I still have a group. Keeping in mind that this is like a fact of life, like human beings are so transient, and sometimes depending on the city you choose, like people move in and out. So I think New York is a good example of that. Maybe Madrid is also a good example of that. Do you need to adapt to someone who is maybe not in alignment with you? I don't think so, Laura. I think like that's why I talk about getting clear on who you are, like the type of people you want in your life, making sure that you exude the type of traits that you want people to show up in as your own life. And if somebody is not aligning with your values, if somebody treats you in a bad way, if somebody is rude just because they're rude and doesn't speak well for you, I don't think you need to touch base with them or continue a friendship. Somebody asked, how do we find connections while we're in the process of learning the language? I think being open to people who are bilingual, so find people who speak your language and then also speak the language of the home country. If your language is like English or French, like looking up English speaking groups or French speaking groups in your particular country so you can get a reprieve. And then also making sure if you want to stay there in that particular country, like trying hard to go to classes and learn the language and making friends with people who are patient so that you can practice and increase your skills. When I lived in Madrid, I did a combination of that. Like I had friends who spoke English mainly. I had friends who were bilingual, and then I also like made it a point to like connect with people who pretty much only spoke Spanish to force myself to learn the language. Okay. Veronica says, I noticed that my friendship in my home country is not strong anymore since I came back, but I'll leave next October for 1 year. How do I maintain them even if I go to live abroad soon? So Veronica, are you saying that you want to figure out how to maintain friendships with the people in your home country even though you move around a lot? You can just say it in the chat, or yeah, Veronica says yes. Yeah, I think it's a really tough one, Veronica. I think it's up to you. So I found that too. I left Trinidad. It's like hard to keep in touch with people because people are more prone to stay close with people who are in their face every day or close by. So like what I would do actually is I would pick the people who I want to maintain friendships with, and I'd be open and honest with them about that. Be like, hi Abigail, or like, hi Marissa, like I really value your friendship. I appreciate you as a person. I really want us to keep in touch. Like, can we set up like a bi-weekly Skype date or a monthly Zoom chat to keep in touch? And then hopefully that person says yes. And then you, at least on your end, you commit to that. And then once a week, like I would make it a point to message that person at least. So, hi Abigail, like things are great in Spain right now. I know you're back in Boston. I'm really missing you. Like what's going on in your life right now. So I think people respond to being treated well and to feeling like if people appreciate them and want them in their life. So like if you can commit to like showing up in their life that way and like messaging them on Facebook or texting them or like ensuring you keep like those monthly Zoom calls, I think that goes a long way to making sure that you maintain those friendships back home. Does that answer your question, Veronica? Is that helpful? Great, awesome. I feel sometimes that the lack of resources can really make teaching out difficult. Also, a lifestyle in a city where you have to work all the time makes meeting people difficult. Okay, I think that's really true. And I think it goes back to really prioritizing what you want in your life. I will say, okay, so work is consuming you. Can you figure out a way to make friends at work? That's pretty tricky because I think sometimes you want to maintain a sense of professionalism, but if work is where you spend 60, 70 hours a day, making it a point to, whether it's people on your team or people in another team who seems like if they have similar interests with you or around your same age group, being like, hey, like, would you like to get happy hour next week? And then making that a consistent thing, you guys getting happy hour next week. And then I think once you've established that rhythm with one or two other people, inviting other people in the office and or the people that you make work friends with, asking them like, hey, do you have a friend or a couple of friends that you think would enjoy these outings that we have? Like, it could be happy hour, but if you're not into going out for drinks, it could be going to a museum together or getting some ice cream and walking around the park. And that's a way to invest in your work, but then also leverage your work relationships to meet other people. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, can you type the questions that you mentioned before? Because I think it will be great to also, in the meanwhile, while you answer these questions, maybe somebody would like to brainstorm and share with us something about the questions that you mentioned before.
Yeah, so I'll just...
I couldn't catch them, so if...
Yeah, I said them pretty quickly. I'm gonna have to pull up it on my computer, but if you just give me 1 second, I'll be able to do that really quickly.
I will also say from my personal experience, I think to connect with locals, I kind of like forced myself a little bit when I was abroad. For example, I could choose between renting a flat with people who were my same nationality or who were expats, and then with someone who could be like a local. And I always choose a local if I can. I know it's complicated, but if you can, I would recommend to also try to get closer to locals by maybe renting a flat with them, because there's many people who maybe move abroad, like they move to this city because maybe they are at the university and they are not in their hometown, so they also do not know that many people in that place. But they are still local because they live in that country. So that could be another possibility, I think. That's my little advice there.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura, for sharing that. I think that's great advice. Yeah, it's really about like putting yourself out there. It's tough, but sometimes we just need to go out of our comfort zone to create relationships that we want. And then I know some people said they're uncomfortable creating relationships with work, and I completely empathize with that. And I would say in that respect, then like pick the two things that you want. Like you want to be good at your job, and you also want to create relationships with friendships. So like I would go back to insight number one, like pick a hobby. So if you like salsa dancing or hip hop dancing, like pick, take 2 hours out of your week where you just go to salsa dance and you go to hip hop class and you commit to that. And like it won't happen in the first 2 weeks, but after 2 months, you will start to see the same people, and those people will feel more comfortable talking to you and introducing themselves, and vice versa. And if you commit to showing up to people in the places where they're like-minded people, people that you have shared interests with, I really firmly believe that great friendships can come out of that. For example, when I moved to San Francisco, it wasn't the first year, but the second year, I joined a salsa group, and I really was there for 2 hours on Friday every single day. And I would say that some of my best friends, not all of them, but some of my best friends are from the people that I met at salsa. And I worked in tech in San Francisco, which is like a very high intensity job. Like people expect you to come in at 8 and like leave at like 8 in the day. And so I really understand like having a high pressure job. But I really think too, like for me, it was a priority. Like I really wanted to make friends with people. And so I made it a point to pick one thing that I could show up to every single week with people that I enjoyed spending time with. And from there, pretty much naturally, friendships started to blossom. Okay, we have I dropped the journal prompts in there if anybody wants to just copy and paste them. I think once the chat closes, they go away. So yeah, Meetup is a great place too. And one thing I like to do with Meetup is I like to, like a few days before the event, see who's going, see if I have anything in interest with them, like if we live in the same place or from the same hometown or in other similar groups. And I actually reach out to them before the meetup, introducing myself and saying like, we have these things in common. And then what I do is that, I make sure that I introduce myself to them when we show up at the group. So that way you kind of like have some people that you sort of like pre-know and can talk to when you show up at like an offline event. So I just wanted to let you guys know about this ebook that I am offering. Again, it's at navigatingculture.co.sparkfriendships-on-apps. And then really guys, if you don't have any more questions, that's it for me. Let's be friends. We're talking about friendship. Let's be friends. I am on Instagram at Navigating Culture. Please DM me. I respond to any DMs. And then if you want to learn like more about like what I'm about and the type of mission that I'm passionate about, you can check me out at www.navigatingculture.co.
Thank you, Anya.
Great. So I will exit out and leave you guys here. And like I said in the first couple slides, use this time to like talk with people and meet and like chat and see who lives in the same city and see who lives in the same country and develop relationships that way.